Hello, welcome back to GOT. By now you've probably all seen these first impressions on the Honor Magic V6. So we already know what that's going to be like. So next up, what we're looking forward to is the Oppo Find N6 and what it's going to be. So we just got another week or so before they do the announcement, and then I'm curious on when it's going to be released. Let's go. So we know the Honor Magic V6 is not going to be released probably until the second half of the year. So we're talking in June. So that's a little ways out. They teased us that it was going to be announced. Everybody thought it was going to be released real quickly soon after that. But apparently that's not happening. They put everybody on an embargo so they can't even talk about it. But of course, in my previous video, if you want to check that out, I gave you a lot more detail because I'm not embargoed. Now, a little bit of a spoiler. There's a bit of a disappointment on the Honor Magic V6. So now my focus is going to be on the Oppo Find N6 and maybe even the Motorola Razr Fold. So let's go ahead and talk about those two and compare them side by side. Check these two out. We know that the Oppo Find N6, along with the Honor Magic V6, were rumored to have that 200 megapixel lens. And according to GSM Arena, they're saying that the Oppo Find N6 is going to have a 200 telephoto lens. So that'd be awesome. That'd be right up there with some of these other phones. Where is it? I've got the 200 or megapixel telescoping lens in the Vivo X300 Pro. We also have it in the Honor Magic 8 Pro. So put that in a foldable, man, that's going to be the one to beat. So I'm really looking forward to the Oppo Find N6, especially if it does have that camera like the specs say. But let's go ahead and break it down, because its competitor, I think, is going to be the Motorola Razr Fold, because they are both running pretty neck and neck on some of their specs. So let's break them down. We've got the Oppo Find N6 and the Motorola Razr Fold that are both going to be 8.1 inch on the internal screen. That's a nice large screen on both of them. So that'll be the largest screens out there. I think the Find N6 might have it edged out by barely. It's got an 8.12, where the Razr is rated at 8.1. But then on the external screen, they're both rated at 6.6 in diagonal on the external screen. So those are going to be really close. So I'm kind of excited about both of those. Now, Motorola, on the other hand, you know, this is their first foldable, where the N6, this is their fifth one on the Oppo, because they skipped 4, if you all remember, gave us that scare. So coming right out the gate with their first foldable, it's going to be really hard for them to compete. But I like where they're going right now with the larger size phone. And with that, they've actually got a lot of hardware in there that's very competitive. So let's go ahead and start with the battery. On the inside, the battery, they both are going to have a 6,000 milliamp hour battery. That's great for a foldable. Now, the Honor Magic V6 has got a 6,660 milliamp hour battery, so it's a little bit larger, and I think their phone's actually a little bit thinner. But they were going for a lot of firsts this year and trying to be impressive with records, but that's not always the best feature of the phone, to be number one in thinness and, you know, certain specs. So I don't know if it's really going to serve them this year. They're both going to have 50 watts wireless charging, so that's pretty impressive. And they both have reverse wireless charging, so they're really mimicking each other on the battery size and the charging capabilities. So with either phone, you've got something pretty special. Now, they are both going to actually have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 5, the Elite Gen 5 chip. So they both are going to have the same chip. However, the Oppo, we already know, is going to take out one of the cores. So it's going to have a 7-core instead of an 8-core. And I know they're doing that for thermal purposes because, you know, these phones are really thin. And Motorola's going to have the full 8-core. So not quite sure what they're going to do. But I can tell you this, they're not as thin as the Oppo. So what does that mean? Motorola is going to be 10.1 millimeters closed, where their Oppo is going to be around 9.8 closed. So not a whole lot of difference, but definitely thinner. You know, I think last year phones were already thin enough. I mean, look at that. Look how thin that is. Because even closed and with a case, it's thinner than the iPhone 17 Pro. So that's pretty incredible. Why do they need to get any thinner? Because I think when you get thinner, you're going to actually have to compromise on some features. So I think that Motorola, not worrying about being the record thinnest, maybe that'll really help them compete. But I don't know a whole lot about Motorola's experience with foldables other than the flips, because this flip is a really nice phone. It's last year's model, and the crease is very minimal. The software is great and pretty fluid, although this doesn't have a Snapdragon processor in it, so I think they're going to do much better going with a Snapdragon in their actual book fold. So I like that their first phone, they're coming out there being competitive with all the other foldables. Unlike some of these other manufacturers like Pixel, when they came out with theirs, they were way behind, and they're still behind. And even Samsung and their foldables coming out behind everybody else. So this is a great show for Motorola. Hey, I want to take a quick second and thank you for tuning into the channel as we talk about the new Oppo Find N6 that's coming out, as well as the Motorola Razr Fold. If you get something out of this video, please do me a favor and smash that like button, because it really does help out the channel and helps me to be able to provide more content for you just like this. Let's get back to the video. Now let's go ahead and move on to cameras, because I know that's one of the big things for me on these foldables is the cameras. And what I want to know is, how are the cameras going to stack up? Well, on the Oppo Find N6, again, it's going to come out with a 50 megapixel main shooter, which is great. Last year it had a similar camera, and it performed really well. As a matter of fact, it was one of the best cameras on the Oppo Find N5, because the others were pretty lousy from what I understand. And it's going to have a 200 megapixel telescoping 3x zoom, which I hope that is the case, but they may disappoint us, kind of like Honor did, and come out with a smaller zoom lens, which I guess that's fine because their competition isn't doing it, but at least they're doing that. And then their ultra wide is going to be a 50 megapixel. They're stepping that up from the 8 megapixel. And then their selfie cameras, they're bringing their selfie cameras to a current size of 20 megapixels. So in other words, the technology caught up with them, and they're not going any thinner, so they're able to actually match the rest of the phones out there. So that's really good, because from what I understand, Oppo's processing on photos is great. So I'm looking forward to testing that out, because the only phone that I had close to that was of course, the OnePlus Open, and it still had the same cameras that we're getting in the Honor Magic V5 and the V6, with the 64 megapixel zoom lens and the 250 megapixel. I guess they're 48 megapixels on the OnePlus Open. But I digress. We're going to be right up there with a 50, 50, and hopefully a 200 on the Oppo Find N6, where on its counterpart there, the Motorola Razr Fold, it's going to have a triple 50 megapixel camera and 20 megapixel selfie cameras. Of course, one of them is going to be a 32 megapixel, and I think that's on the external screen. So they're going to have a little bit of a higher end megapixel count. Now, I don't know how well Motorola's processing is, because they are not well known for being up there with the flagship phones on their processing. So hopefully they will step it up. We know that with the Oppo Find N, they're using Hasselblad as their backer and camera color precision maker. Like Zeiss is with the Vivo, I think Hasselblad is really good way to go. So that's going to be a really high-end camera. And for me, that may end up stepping that up ahead of the Honor phones. And I'm really anticipating, if they come up with that 200 megapixel camera, the Oppo is going to be my favorite fold of the year. Now, both of these phones, of course, are going to run Android 16, so they're going to be right up there. I don't know how they're going to do on a foldable for multitasking on the Motorola, and I keep forgetting the name because they haven't been a player for well, ever. So, but I wonder how Motorola's multitasking is going to be. We don't know. We know that Oppo is probably one of the top performers in multitasking. I enjoy the OnePlus Open's multitasking more than anything else, so I'm really looking forward to that. I think just the one downside may be their throttling of their processor, but it still may do better than the 5 Gen that they're putting in the new V6, because I can almost guarantee they're going to throttle that chip. But if you want to know more about that, check out some of my other videos. Now it's time to hear from you. What are you looking forward to? Were you disappointed on the announcements so far this year? I mean, we got the Samsung S26 Ultra with really no change, a privacy screen. I mean, come on, we've got the privacy screens already on these older phones, as you can see here. So I don't know. Privacy screen is not a big feature as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, getting off track. So tell me what you think. Are you excited about the Oppo Find N? Are you excited to really look at this Motorola Razr Fold that's coming out? Let's talk about it. Until then, it's going to be a while for some of these phones to come out. So we're going to be doing a lot of reviews on a lot of different phones. If you have any suggestions or things that you would like to see, let me know about that down in the comments as well. If you want a closer look at the leaks of these two phones, check out this video here. Until next time, have a wonderful day and God bless.